I'm absolutely honored to give you my today's guests. Please welcome in UATV English studio Anton Korynevych, His Excellency Ambassador at Large of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Your Excellency, in your co-authored article, hello.
Hello.
Just, I forgot to say hello. In your co-authored article written for International Bar Association, which is titled Comment and Analysis, Why the World Needs a Tribunal to Try the Russian Leadership for the Crime of Aggression, written together with Andrei Smirnov, Deputy Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, and Mark Ellis, Executive Director of the International Bar Association. You write, I quote from here, if you allow me, post-war legal order is in jeopardy. That means you're putting mildly my thoughts and the bare fact that, like, the global legislature is just not ready for the scale of aggression. Count me in if you gentlemen want to change the world, but talk us through what you want to change and what this brave new world will look like after you do.
Well, I wouldn't say that we want to change the world itself. We just want to have justice and accountability, in particular for aggression, for the aggressive war. And we see that now in international law there is no mechanism, no court, nor a tribunal, which can bring to accountability the political military leaders of the Russian Federation. So our endeavor is to fill the existing gaps, loopholes in the architecture, in the system of international accountability, to establish a tribunal which will be able to go to prosecute and punish the highest political and military leadership of the Russian Federation for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. But if we talk about this, we may also say that one of the foundational and fundamental principles of international law is the principle of non-use of force and non-threat of force. So, of course, by punishing the crime of aggression, I would say this principle, the whole international legal system benefit.
The whole system benefit, but the system is not ready yet.
Well, we are trying to make it ready
Exactly.
in the sense that we are trying to establish such a tribunal, such a court, such an international mechanism, and we are working for a year and a half on this issue. So we started immediately after the full-scale invasion of Russian Federation began.
Well, if you ask me, you are actually changing the world, which is a good thing. But let me put my hopes into words. Ukraine wins. Putin disappears. How are you going to try him? In absentia?
Well, first of all, I want to mention that this tribunal is not only for one person.
Okay.
So, of course, this person is principally important because this is his orders, his commands, his instructions. But it is important to notice that there are others, maybe these are the members of the National Security Council of Russia, the others, ministers, commanders of the army, commanders of ministries who are responsible for aggression, who also gave orders and instructions. So, if we have a tribunal, or I would better say when we have a tribunal, we will have a tribunal mechanism which will be able to prosecute all of them. So this is not an issue only about the Russian president. But of course, we want to see him on the bench there. Concerning in absentia procedures, all the modality issues, technical issues, legal issues are being discussed right now. So in particular, the one whether we can go for an absentia tribunal. So these are issues which we discuss together with our international partners, and we hope that we would find a solution.
His Excellency Ambassador at Large, Anton Korynevych, does he believe that Mr. Putin, Comrade Putin, will actually be sitting on the bench on the trial process and be tried, whether in Hague or wherever it will be happening?
I truly believe that he needs to face justice and accountability. And our job is to do everything possible for this to happen. And if I and my colleagues, if we wouldn't believe in that, then we would do some other job maybe.
Great. I will take this as an answer. Amen to that. Thank you. Article bis of the Rome Statute defines the crime of aggression as the planning, preparation, initiation, or execution of an act of aggression by a person who controls or directs state's political or military action, that is, Vladimir Putin. Who else?
Well, of course, it is up for the tribunal and for the judges to decide. So we cannot predict right now, sitting in Kiev or in any other city in the world, who will be there. But we think that this might be up to maybe 20 persons. So the most important commanders and leaders, political and military, of the Russian Federation, who really took part in the giving of instructions and orders for the commencement of this war and for waging of this war. Because what is a crime of aggression? Is waging the war illegal, which is which is illegal under the UN Charter. So this may be maybe up to 20 persons. And what I already mentioned, this may be the members, the permanent members in particular of the National Security Council of the Russian Federation. But it doesn't mean that everybody else will not be responsible. Soldiers, lieutenants, captains, they should also be responsible, but for war crimes.
So this is a collective case?
This is, I would say, different pieces, elements of the accountability system. We have now courts which can adjudicate cases on war crimes.
Right.
Let's say national courts in Ukraine, in other states, International Criminal Court, but we do not have a court for the crime of aggression for these 20 persons, let's say. So that is why we are now trying to fill this gap.
So you're trying to level up the system?
Yes, and to fill the gaps, the loopholes which currently exist.
Okay. Your article says that, I quote again, that no individual has been tried internationally for the crime of aggression before World War II and after the Nuremberg and Tokyo trials. After we try Putin, can we go back in time and try for the crime of aggression Joseph Stalin, for example? That would be possible?
I think that this would be impossible because the person is already dead. But what is important for us now is that this Nuremberg legacy, legacy of Nuremberg, is important for our case. Because we say that this war of aggression is the biggest war of aggression, at least in Europe, after 1945. And the international community should find the appropriate answer to that aggression. How the answer was found in Nuremberg. And if in our case, we will have a tribunal which will be the only tribunal after Nuremberg and Tokyo who would try political and military leaders for the crime of aggression, then let it be.
Paradoxically, at the moment, Putin is innocent because this is the trial, right?
Yeah, sure.
So he is a defendant.
If he faces the trial.
If he faces the trial. Let's say he faces the trial, he's a defendant, he would have to have a lawyer. Is that right?
Surely, everybody needs to have a lawyer.
Even that.
Yeah, that's basic legal principles.
Well, you're smiling. All right. But, okay. So, if he is a defendant, and he has a lawyer, there is a slim chance still, that he could prove his innocence in part or in full. Is that possible?
Well, there is always a possibility of anything and everything. But I think that this case with the crime of aggression is very obvious. Because this aggression is very understandable for the world. It's being worldwide and globally recognized as aggression, in particular by the resolutions of UN General Assembly, of pretty much all the international organizations involved in these issues. So this is a very obvious, I would say, case. And I think that this case will be easy to prove and shouldn't take a lot of time. The most important issue now is to get a solution, to get the understanding how do we proceed with the establishment of the tribunal, and actually to establish it, and then, of course, to get the defendants on the bench.
All right. When they're on the bench, how harsh could be the punishment?
Well, it deals with an issue how it will be written up in the statute, in the charter of the tribunal. But if we look at the punishment system, penalty system, let's say, of the International Criminal Court, we may use quite the same system. It has a punishment system of imprisonment up to 30 years or lifetime imprisonment. So I think that the same system may be applied here.
So lifetime imprisonment, we can just put him back into Russian bunker and lock him up there?
Well, it depends. He may spend his life in some other jail in some other country.
Well, I believe that's what he's doing now. Some of my friends say that we don't need to waste money and time for this trial. I think we need to, because we need to pursue the goals to be as just as we can in this world. But what do you think? Obviously, you think that we need to do that, but what would you answer to these people that say, well, we don't need to waste time, effort, and money to do this like fake trial? You know, it's better to kill that person, but not to try him. What would you answer to that?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that we need this trial and other international courts. We need them because we need international decisions, judgments about the situation, and we need to see that somebody is tried for aggression, somebody is tried for war crimes, that Russia is being held accountable as a state. And moreover, if we go back again to 1945, to Nuremberg, we would say that maybe the victor states could think the same, that they don't need a tribunal, but they needed one, and they established one. And it was important for the system of international law, for the post-war era, because it was based basically on the principles which were enshrined in the tribunal. So I believe that this is important because victory on the battlefield is, of course, the main element, and that is why our Ukrainian heroes, Ukrainian armed forces, are the main heroes of this time in the world, I'm sure.
Right.
But we, as diplomats, as lawyers, we need to get these mechanisms done because accountability matters, and it's not only enough for us here to say that he is a war criminal. We need a judgment on that.
I agree with you totally. I take that as an answer. And I would say that those people that are actually saying that it wouldn't worth to spend much time and effort just have to look at the history back. And World War II is not great, but a great in terms of the size example, how the perpetrators should be handled. And one more question. After that happens, what happens to the legislature system? Do you think that every lawyer can then try the crime of aggression?
Well, first of all, for us, it is important that the crime of aggression is tried in this particular situation. So we are not thinking of creating something universal which will be useful for any kind of conflict. We are not. We are trying to establish a tribunal for this particular case, Russian aggression against Ukraine. Because here we have gap and loophole, and we need to fill it. We need to cover it. But I think that we need to think about quite obvious things. That if we do not establish a tribunal now, and if the crime of aggression is not tried now in this situation, then it might be a disaster for whole international legal system, for the principle of non-use of force or threat of force, and for the understanding that you may not just start an aggressive war because you want to do that, understanding that it is totally illegal. So I would say that, of course, international law, international legal system, international legal order will benefit from this tribunal. Crime of aggression, the concept of it will benefit. But I would say quite opposite. If we do not do that together with our international partners, then it may be really big challenges and problems for the whole contemporary international law.
Okay, I take that perfectly. Understandable. Putin, Shoigu, Peskov, whoever, 20 people. What about the rest of the country? Do you think that the rest of the nation should be held accountable for letting the outdated Soviet Tsar to rule, to change the constitution? I mean, you just written whatever it is written in Russian constitution, we the people, you could just amend it and put, I'm the Putin, and they're Putin. I'm Putin and would do whatever you want. Because this is the Russian nation that did that. They wanted a Tsar and they got him, but we didn't want that. So, should we held accountable the whole nation, and how?
Well, that is why we are saying about the loophole and gap for the crime of aggression. For other crimes and for other misconduct, we do have courts. For instance, for Russian military personnel, for their soldiers and officers, we have International Criminal Court and we have national courts of Ukraine and other states where they can be tried and punished for, let's say, war crimes and crimes against humanity. For the Russian state, for the Russian government, we have International Court of Justice, for instance, where we just had hearings in June on two of the conventions which we believe Russia violate. And we have two cases against Russia there. We have other courts and tribunals which can bring Russia to accountability as a state. Let's say tribunals for the law of the sea and also the European Court of Human Rights. So we do have, I would say, international courts leverage when we can go. So that is why in this particular case, we see that this gap of the crime of aggression is very obvious to everybody in the world. And we need to try all that we can to fill it.
Great, thank you. And my last answer for today. What if Putin dies tomorrow? What about the trial?
We still need this tribunal and trial because it's not only about him, as I said. I believe that there are other persons who should be tried for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. They need to face justice.
Thank you very much, Anton, for your time and for your expertise. I hope to have you back in our studio very soon too, because I've got a lot of questions and maybe we can find a time to discuss them.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. It was UATV English. We were happy to have Anton Korynevych, His Excellency, Ambassador at Large of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.